thank you for joining us. Today's discussion is about mind, body, and stress, the connection. And joining me in this discussion is Dr. Rajiv Tony Juneja, who is a practicing psychiatrist. Thank you, Dr. Juneja, for joining us.
Hi, Janet.
Dr. Juneja, stress it's very important. You know, stress is, we deal with it every day. It's almost like a protection factor within our body.
Yes.
And it's our body's way of protecting us. But what is too much stress, and how does that affect us on a physiological level when we're overloaded?
Yeah, I would say, you know, stress actually in small amounts, manageable stress, actually helps us grow and become more resilient. But when we have unremitting stress that's not going away, that's a problem. That's a problem because it clearly activates our stress response. So there are changes that happen in hormone levels. So, for example, individuals with diabetes, their glucose or their sugar levels will become more dysregulated when they're under tremendous unremitting stress versus when they have less stress.
Now, when you say we can grow from our stress,
yes.
There's good stress, the stress of completing school, or the stress of completing a particular project at work,
yes.
The stress of, you know, certain family things that may be going on, of planning a party or doing whatever. There are good stresses,
right.
And then there are very bad stresses,
yeah.
Some of which we may have control over and have maybe lost connection to, and those that we do not.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you know, the aspect, you know, to look at is how am I managing my stress? Am I asking for support? So when I'm feeling overwhelmed in the marriage, am I going to my spouse? Am I saying, hey, you know what? I'm really feeling overwhelmed right now. I need your help. Or am I trying to, you know, be Superwoman or Superman, trying to manage it all alone? Because there really isn't one person that doesn't need support, at least in my mind.
Coming back to the mind-body connection with stress,
yes.
If we're not seeking that support or discussing what it is that we're actually feeling within our heart space, I will call it, and really addressing it, it starts to go to other places within our body and we get sick, we get worn down, it affects our organs. I mean, all kinds of things start to take place.
Absolutely.
If we're not
Literally,
addressing
the
it.
immune system is less effective at fighting off infections. So individuals that are, again, say, you know, somebody who's giving a caretaker, for example, who has somebody in the house and they're providing care for that individual, you know, that they're more predisposed to developing infections because of the unremitting aspect to their stress than somebody who doesn't have that. So clearly there's a connection between the mind and the body. Primarily there's a stress response that has to do with the hormone cortisol. And when there's high levels of cortisol, let me just put it this way, it impacts everything. It impacts how your heart's functioning, how your kidneys are functioning. It literally causes changes in your brain cells, structurally speaking. So these changes are real, and this is why it's very important to get support. You have to ask for help.
When we think of stress, too, Dr. Juneja, it's not just that word stress. There is also fear that people are confronted with. And what is the difference between normal fear versus
conditioned fear? So, yeah, there's real fear. So, you know, I mean, anybody, you know, sometimes you get, say if you're faced with walking down a dark alley or a tunnel as you're going out onto the boardwalk in Atlantic City, and it's empty. Well, that's, you know, that's kind of, and one needs to be cautious about that versus, you know, that same response starts happening as you're walking through Target or some other, you know, department store. Well, obviously that's kind of it's not needed in the department store. So sometimes these things become generalized to areas they really don't belong. So they become conditioned versus real fear where it's appropriate.
And when we think of coming back to stress and those fears and how it's affecting our behaviors and our relationships,
yes.
If we're bringing that back home, or we're bringing it out into the community in which we live, or the work environment, and how if we're not addressing that, how it just really is
It impacts
resonating out
everything.
there.
It impacts everything. One of my colleagues in the past would always, kind of say to me, it's important to look at what you're bringing to the party, so to speak. Am I
that's a
arriving
good-
home
that's-
with kind of open arms and a smile, or am I arriving home with a frown on my face, irritable and angry about something? So it's really important to look at how we're carrying the stress and how we're dealing with it, because now if I'm going home irritable and angry, I don't know how the spouse is going to take too well to that.
This is very true. Now, what are some of the treatments that one could seek in trying to manage the stress or get support to deal with it?
I'd say one of the primary modalities would be to get one into psychotherapy. It can be group psychotherapy, it can be individual psychotherapy, but where you're going to learn more coping skills. Now, if one doesn't want to really go to psychotherapy, maybe a seminar that works on advancing your understanding in kind of the different aspects to a healthier lifestyle. Maybe it would be reading a book on how to manage your stress better, but doing something that is going to make you more aware of really the factors that contribute.
And who you are, and honoring your space.
That's right.
And it could be listening to a meditation tape, listening to some beautiful, soft music, finding a sacred space within your home that could just be your space for just to get away.
Just taking 5 minutes to sit down quietly without having to run around and with the to-do list in our back pocket.
And breathing.
And breathing. But these simple things make a big, big difference.
Because quite often, too, people forget about their own passions, especially if they're caregivers or they're caregivers, they're working, they're dealing with a particular disability, just caught up in the everyday stresses of our world brings to us each
Right.
day. But it's recognizing that there needs to be some time to come back to a space that's yours, and if it's not a space that you can get to seek help.
Right.
In getting to that space.
Right, but again, exactly what you said about identifying something you feel passionate, you feel good about. So one of my friends, she does stained glassing, and she makes these beautiful, stained glass objects. But this is something she tremendously enjoys, and it decreases her stress. So finding something that you can actually enjoy, and making sure you're taking some time out for yourself.
You need yourself to be fully present and as whole as possible. And that is what we're trying to accomplish here today in our discussion, and really understanding the connection of the mind and body.
Right.
And when stress is involved in our lives.
Right, because if we're not present, it's very difficult to actually move ahead with our goals, personally, professionally. So it is key to be present.
On that note, thank you, Dr. Janasia. Great information, and I'm more stress-free at the moment.
Thank you.
For more information on the mind-body connection and stress, please log in to our website at www.lastinglifestyles.net. Thank you.